instaMERSION.
Welcome everybody to the next episode of I Am Talk. This is my good friend Andrew Cahill from Cahill Brothers Incorporated, right? One of the CEOs, the partners, founders of film production company. And Andrew is just a man who is, I think you're just so skilled and so knowledgeable, and you have a track record of just doing a lot of interesting projects, and I just can't wait to just dive into just learning more about you and your passions and seeing what's coming up ahead.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about if there's anything that you represent or that you're, I mean, I don't want to label you or whatnot, but I just think of film, I think of producing, I think of writing, directing, editing, everything in that whole media world. But talk to me a little bit, about how that journey started and how did you get to where you are today?
It was a bit of a fluke, actually. I had a bunch of different careers in my 20s. I had done everything from, I was in the Army briefly, I was a stockbroker, I was a high school teacher.
You went to law school too,
Yeah,
right?
I went to law school. So I did my first year of law school, and I wasn't a great law student. I wasn't a great student in general. But I loved the law, I thought it was really fun. But I found myself sort of a little bit, while I love the subject matter, I thought what I'm going to end up doing didn't excite me that much. Although now I think it would be kind of fun to be doing trial work. But I dropped out of law school. I had a girlfriend at the time who got a job in New York City. So I went to New York City with her. And I was talking to my brother's roommate, who said she was a documentary film editor. I had no idea what that was, but it sounded cool. And she asked me if I wanted to go visit her work, where it was a production company.
Cool.
So I went, it was a production company in Times Square. And I went and hung out with her for a day, and then I just volunteered. I said,
no way.
Yeah, I told the owner, I'm like, so he had me work for 4 months, and that's how I started editing. And then I was an editor for a number of years, working at, a lot of news, CNN and ABC, and I did some producing there too.
Once you first set foot on that set, it must have been just a whole different world, right?
Well, people forget that what was so strange about it is it was the first time, to me, computers and television were two completely separate things. I mean, and I remember I went into the first post-production suite that they had. There was a guy who was doing finishing, and it was all Avid, and everything was super expensive in those, but he was doing an online, which is where you take all the low-res footage and then online it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it was really, but he was also rotoscoping, which means he was cutting out one of the actors and putting them into another scene. And I remember watching, this was in 1999 or 2000, I can't remember, I think it was maybe, and I remember thinking, I will never believe anything I see on TV again, because it was so real. This guy was suddenly with these other people, but he wasn't there when they shot it. He actually was missing that day, so they shot 2 things, locked off, and just put him in the scene. Anyway.
There's something intriguing about that at the same time, too.
It was fascinating. I was like, how much of the other stuff I've seen in my life isn't real?
Isn't actually there, right?
Yeah. So and I think, now it's easy for us. Every high school student knows how to edit stuff on a computer. But at the time, I had never seen video manipulated at all. I just kind of never even thought about how it got to my TV screen. So it was fascinating. And then, and then going into news, it was also another way of seeing how the whole thing was
That's a whole different
made.
dimension of, yeah. And so you've seen kind of different types of video media productions for television, for film, for, I mean, just news in itself, right? Just the types of things that you would shoot, the turnaround, how, like, it always just fascinated me how just journalists create stories right on the dot, and then the turnaround for seeing things on the news where I was like, wait,
I remember when I was there
a few hours ago.
When I was at CNN, I worked at ABC, and I remember thinking that ABC was going to be like, it was ABC Network New York City.
Huge,
I thought, this is going to be the biggest thing. I was editing in a closet, basically, still using tape. We were using Digibeta tape.
Oh my gosh.
And at CNN, they had built out this beautiful studio at Columbus Circle, and it was like, I remember one of the early pieces that I edited, it was great. Like, I would just say, I'm just making this up, a compression shot, which was just people like feet walking, but it had to be in Shanghai. And they were really specific. You couldn't just show feet. They literally had to be feet in Shanghai. So I had to go request it, but it was great. And I remember so you'd work an 8-hour shift, And in that 8-hour shift, you'd produce 2 full packages, which, are 2 or 3 minute. So it was really, the cutting was really fast. You'd work with the reporters. I really loved it. It was really fun. But I remember there was one of the earliest days when I was just starting there, editing this piece together. And suddenly they were just, because in those days, I'm not sure this is true anymore, if you had a 3-minute package, you had to fuse it to the server. It took 3 minutes to basically render it out for broadcast. And if you didn't have 3 minutes between the time you finished and Anderson Cooper was literally throwing to your package, they would patch you into the director, and you'd be patched in and you'd listen, and they would say, okay, 3, 2, 1. And as you watched Anderson Cooper on TV, he'd say, and now we're going to go to this. And then you'd hear them when the director say play, and you'd hit play on your computer, and it would go directly out over the air.
Hello.
And I was just like, and you're literally finishing right up to the last second, and then hit play. Yeah, it was fun.
I have anxiety just thinking about
it. Was a rush and scary. You're just it was fun.
I mean, I work with a company right now where they'll sub me out to do what's called VNRs, virtual news releases. And we'll go out and shoot on DSLRs or mirrorless cameras, and I just can't imagine what you had to do back in the day just with the tape decks and doing that kind of editing versus even with the digital side, how advanced that it's become. I still get anxiety just racing home, just trying to upload footage and, be able to get a few seconds.
The one thing great about it, though, is that you've got all this support, first of all, right?
Yeah.
So you're not doing it by yourself. You're doing it with lots of people.
Thank goodness, right?
And there's something about pressure. I think that, artists need pressure.
Yeah.
Without a deadline, I never finish anything, right? You just tinker with it forever, and so
you have to make decisions, and things are okay.
Yeah,
it's
and when this thing is going live in 18 minutes, you're just it's great, and then you never think about it again.
Yeah.
Unlike film or project, you're like done, and it's working on film projects is so different because you live with it for years, And
speaking of film, how did you make that transition from working with these news companies for X amount of years, but then transitioning over to the film world?
It was sort of a 2-step process. I was working on a film. I think I was working at 2020 at the time. I was doing a medical mysteries thing. I was editing this project, and a friend of mine worked for a consulting firm, and he called me and he said, hey, we're trying to make a documentary. Can you come help us? And so I went. I'd never even heard of it. I didn't know anything about management consulting or anything. I went and worked with them. The money was great. The project was fun. And that kind of turned into a 12-year career working with this consulting firm. And during that period, I had a friend who was a filmmaker, and she made a movie that she couldn't edit. She was having huge problems. It was her first time as a film director. She was an actress normally, and so she had directed and acted. And she had made some stuff where she was like, I don't know why I did it. But anyway, we struggled with it because it was just hard to put together. Yeah. And so she brought me in. That was my first experience with a film, is editing that story into a feature. And it was really fun to do. And she was great. I worked with her again we did a play together that she wrote. It was a great play that was an off-Broadway play a year later or 2 years later with Buck Henry, who wrote The Graduate, and Holland Taylor. And it was really, so we did that together. So that was my first stint in film. And then I had this friend who was an old friend of mine who was a screenwriter and had been writing for years. And I just thought, he had the way he wrote was so directorial, you could read his scripts and just see it. And I knew him for so long, I was like, you should be directing. And so we just had these conversations for years about making something. And one year I was like, after working with my friend Lisa, who's the one who did the play, and she's the one who taught me, no, you can't leave it open-ended. You have to, and this is a trick for anyone who's making art, set a deadline. And I mean a deadline like if you think you're going to make a play, go rent the theater before you even have the script.
Wow, that forces you, that puts you in that.
You know that in 3 months you're going to have a bunch of actors show up, and that's what Lisa would do. And she would turn out this artwork. And I always thought, well, I'll wait until I've got the script and
it's got to be perfect.
Never get it done. So pressure is our friend. And so after working with Lisa, I said to my friend Jeff, I was just like, let's just set it. Next summer we're shooting this thing, even if it's like an iPhone and the two of us, we're going to make this movie. And Jeff turned a play that he'd written into a movie, and then, we just started rolling with it. And Jeff, it was his first feature film. He directed it. I produced it with another friend of his who had done a lot of producing before. She was sort of like the actual. She really made it happen because I didn't know what I was doing. But that was my first taste of it. And then being on set every day, it was really fun. And then since then, we did another documentary and another feature that just came out, I guess 6 months ago or so. So
nice.
We had a theatrical release, which I wasn't expecting. And my friend Ryan wrote this film and produced it. And then from there, I'd been in enough that I just then. It's funny. Right before COVID happened, I came to, my parents live here, so I came, I was traveling, and I had a documentary, we had a documentary in a festival on the Big Island.
Oh, wow.
And so I was there, and I came here to visit on my way back, and this friend told me this crazy story. Called me up out of nowhere and said, I have a story to tell you. And so it turned into a feature film, because after he told me the story, I thought, oh, this is a movie. I can see the movie. Like, you just told me a movie. Can we make it? And so I've been working on that for the last year. But as sort of I want to direct it, but I'm both directing and producing, and man, that's a hard task.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a hard.
I see this journey of, how you were able to start from, just the news world as an editor and just kind of being more behind the scenes with maybe stuff that someone else had already shot, and then you just having to kind of put it together, and then now kind of being able to expand from that, right? As, a writer, a producer, what was that leap like for you? Just kind of going from, being behind the computer, and now you're the storyteller, right?
It's an interesting, I think the biggest, I don't know if this is true for everybody, but certainly for me, it's a struggle of, there's like barriers to, there's like fear places where you run into like, oh, this is too scary or I don't know if I can do this. And it's often not that obvious. I actually found doing a lot of writing that the way fear of these things manifested for me was excitement about a new idea. So if you and I had an idea, we're working on it, and then as we get closer to actually making it, I suddenly become obsessed with something else. You're
the man of many ideas. I remember you were sharing with me.
I've got lots of ideas, and now I just write them down on a board. And I'm like, okay, that idea has to go on the shelf, because otherwise what I find is I would get really far with an idea, and then I would be inspired by a new idea. So now I'm like, inspiration is not necessarily my friend always. It is in a way. And I have to meditate to know what the difference is, right? Because sometimes the inspiration is clearly coming from somewhere else, and other times it's anxiety. And so that's been sort of interesting, making that transition to finding it's fun to help others make their idea. Like that I really like. I like hearing. And that doesn't kick up any fear for me, because I'm helping you.
Exactly.
It's great. I'm easy to help out. But when it suddenly, and this is why it's really hard to talk to people who haven't done it, including when I was like trying to direct, I'm just like, oh, I understand now the anxiety of why somebody would do that. The fear of really being out in front and sticking your neck out. Some people do it easily. Like, it's just, that's not easy for me, right? So even though I like being out in front, I always had that fantasies, I'm going to go be an actor or something. In reality, I feel much safer on that side of the camera, like behind there, doing the editing, doing the creative work.
I know exactly how you feel being in this seat myself.
I was going to say, you must
And then even for us to be having this conversation, right, it's easy as I think for more people that have done videography for a long time to feel kind of safe in that editing world. And there's a whole art to it too, right? But to actually say, hey, I understand it enough to actually take some risks and now launch with your own new fresh ideas and just have explore that different side of creativity. I think it's awesome. You were talking a lot about I just kind of saw a pattern of just your friend booking that theater and saying, okay, you know what, like even though we haven't finished writing this, but we're gonna set that. For you, with all these new ideas emerging and all sorts of inspirations, how do you decide what actually gets finished or what actually goes to?
Great question. That's a great question.
Right, because you probably have just a slew of many projects you could be working on, but by the end of the day, something has to get released, right?
Well, and that's it's a struggle. Normally this is where I love collaboration, right? Working with other people really helps me. By myself, I tend to come up with great ideas. I was talking to a friend of mine on the phone, and there's this idea that I've been playing around with about doing a sitcom, and so I'll fire off the email to the people. I'll start putting it in motion, and that part is easy for me. And I think it's so knowing your skills and where your weaknesses are, and being able to find people who can collect,
absolutely,
because to me that's it. By myself, I'll just keep doing the same thing. And then there is a piece that is, I want to say, more of like a spiritual piece of it, which is knowing which things, I guess having faith that the things that you're doing are the is sort of the right thing to be spending your time on, as opposed to sort of, and that to me has been, meditation has been part of it. It's like I haven't, and I struggle with it, and sometimes I'm certainly not good at it. But I try, and so I find that trying to figure out which is, like I said, which is the fear, which is the inspiration that you should follow, what is the right. And I do, the film that we were working on now, the budget we have is so small, and there's one other person who helped me with the thing. We were working on it together. And there's so much production post-COVID. I was hoping we would get in under the wire, but production took off again about 6 months ago. And I can't find a crew that I can't, I just having trouble finding.
Everyone's all back to work.
Everyone's back to work. And if I had enough money, I could find crew. But without any money, with very little money, it's sort of a favor, and I don't expect anyone to commit knowing that suddenly, Magnum PI will call them, and of course they're gonna go, they should go. So I've been figuring that out, and that's been an interesting process of just sort of figuring out, like, okay, what's the next right thing to work on? I do think having the right team around you is important.
No, definitely, yeah. Especially when it comes to just areas that we're not all jack of all trades, right?
Yeah.
And then even as we were having lunch a few weeks ago, like, just what God was showing me about you was how I believe you have a very strong visionary gifting, like those ideas, and I can see just a lot of people even just wrestling, trying to figure out what to write or what idea to have, but seeing like this whole just explosion of ideas coming from left and right. I see that as a true gift, but actually not seeing you having to be the man to be behind every position to make sure those things get done, right?
Well, and that's the part that I think it's hard for me. This is where the meditation piece is, and just sort of like, one of those things that was certainly not a part of my life growing up or later, sort of prayer and meditation, sort of the taking the time and the space to see what's true. And this is what I found, is that I struggle with, well, what are the parts that I actually can do and should be doing? And what are the parts that I have to let go to other people?
Yeah. What's the most enjoyable for you? Like, there's so many amazing facets of it, right?
When we were on the last film, I was watching the director work, and he was his friend Sean, he was so buttoned up. I mean, he came binders, every shot planned. I am not a planner, like you said. I'm sort of ideas come, I'm like throwing out stuff. I'm more of like a spitballer than a planner.
No, that's a gifting though. That's a gifting.
Well, it's a gift in certain areas, and then in other areas you're like, okay, stop talking, let's get this thing done, right? So it depends on what you're doing. But I was watching him and I thought, I've always wanted to direct because I can often see, I'm like, okay, what if it's like this? But as I've thought about it more and more, I keep thinking, well, maybe you're trying to force something that's not meant to, and I don't know the answer to this one. This is happening. This is happening in real time right now, where I'm looking at it and thinking, maybe I've got 3 other projects that are sort of percolating, talking to people about. It's like maybe the idea of directing one of them means I can't produce all of them. Maybe I'm just supposed to produce, and I'm fighting something I'm supposed to do. And I love editing, so I always want to play with the editing, but editing has also changed. You edit all these, do you?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it's minimal editing for something like this, because it's just rolling and going from camera to camera.
Yeah, but I'm watching some of the young people. I had an assistant who is now a documentary film editor, and I was looking at sort of some of the things she did, something that's on HBO now, and I haven't really edited in years. I mean, really edited, like for broadcast. Right. I'm looking at it and thinking, there is a point where like there are people who can do it better. Find the best people for the job, and that is an ego thing, actually. I think letting go of your ego and thinking, all right. Yeah. So I don't have an answer yet. Am I not directing this thing? I don't know. Well, it'll reveal itself, I guess.
No, I hope it does for you. And I know it's always a thing that we all wrestle with, right? In terms of, what's our strengths, what's our weaknesses, but also what can we healthily release so that these projects can thrive and you can kind of be in your sweet spot, right? Doing what's most enjoyable and what's most fulfilling. Speaking of which, what would you consider a successful project? Because I don't know if perfectionist is the right word, but somebody that is very true to your, the things that you write and wanting it to see the best production that would, express what it is that you're envisioning. At what point do you say, hey, you know what, like or maybe it's a project that you've done in the past where you can say, hey, you know what, from start to finish, like, I'm just so proud of this work or for what it's achieved, and this is the epitome of a successful production.
Well, I always think of that quote about art is never finished, only abandoned, right? That idea of that. I do think that's why I think the trick of setting deadlines is so important, is that it's hard. Like, so this is sometimes the idea of working something, really working it can be, but oftentimes it's just inspiration that comes from nowhere, and you write something down and you can keep working it, but you're not going to really improve it.
Right.
And so I think sometimes the deadline, the goal, like we're making this next summer, and then all the right people show up because everyone's talking to people, and they do, and then whether your script is perfect or not, well, that's what we're shooting. And that is the decision, is this is what we have. Could it be better? Sure, of course.
It can always be better.
It can always be better. And that's the problem. So I think there is the film that I've written that now I'm on draft 3 that we've been talking about making. We postponed production. We're supposed to be shooting right now, and we just couldn't find the right crew, so we postponed it. And one of my friends was like, well, maybe you're supposed to rewrite it. And I think there is something to that. I think there's something about the film that's not quite ready.
Right.
But I don't know if that means I'm supposed to work it more, or when we get the right actor, it'll become clear, because film, of course, isn't on the script, is a blueprint.
Right.
So, I don't know. So I think most of it is just sort of whatever actually turns up is what was supposed to happen, So
there's a lot to be said about, just creating, right? And we're both creators in our own sense, but being able to constantly put something out there, and to, even as I'm doing this talk show, right? I'm always seeing, like, with every episode that we're putting out there, I'm like, I could have done this better. I could have done this better. And I'm like, you know what? I'll just put out what I can for this episode, and I'll just take it to the next episode to add. And I don't know if it's like that with film, where you can say, okay, well, we've taken it to a certain point. It's gone to production, but could have been better.
Well,
but you know what? Let's just work on the next one.
And I think, that's it. Work on the next one, because I guess there are some people who work on the same thing and keep
over and over and over. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think, and this brings, it's funny because this has always been an internal struggle. I think ego and shame. It's like putting something out there that's not perfect.
Yeah, you want it to best represent who you are, right?
You want it to be great. You want it to be, and I think this is where having a sense of faith or trust that you're just. My job isn't how you think about it. My job is just to make it.
Yeah.
I have a friend who always
pretty profound. Yeah.
Yeah, he always used to say to me, "You're not in the results business. You're in the action business." And I remember always being like, "No, but I want to win an Oscar."
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not you don't have any. You could make the best movie in the world, and not that winning. That can't be your motivation. There has to be, like, I want to say this, or I want. So that's just, and that's a hard one to think. Like, I'm going to put this out there, and nothing might happen. Right? Just nothing at all might happen. Or people might make fun of you, or it might be genius and
right.
Totally out of your hands.
What's a project that you've done where you've received a lot of good feedback, a lot of accolades, and just a lot of where you actually kind of did a lot more than you thought it would?
I had one, came to mind out of nowhere. I had one where I worked for a client. This is not a film project. This is almost like a throwaway project where somebody came to me and said, we're a huge company, this is a big company, and they wanted to make something. They were going to their board of directors, which was like 12 people, and they wanted to make something to convince them to increase their cyber security budget. And they were looking for double, which they were like, it's insane, we're not going to get double.
That's crazy that they had the funds to make a video just for this.
Big company, they had a lot of money.
Oh my gosh.
And so they came to me and they were like, what can we do about it? And I remember pitching that we would make, because I had been working in the news for years, I was like, let's make the news segment of what CNN would be saying about the company post breach. So we hired a newscaster. We shot on green screen. I had a great crew. My friend Dave was just like, we did this like really cool thing, and they took it in. The head of cybersecurity took it in and showed them the news segment as it happened after a breach.
Well, they probably thought it was real.
First of all, they said, destroy this.
Yeah.
I don't ever want it. I don't want any copies of this to exist. So they had to destroy it. I don't have any copies of it. It was great.
Yeah.
And he got 3 times the budget.
No way.
So
that was enough for them to
that video. He said, I didn't have to tell them anything else. I just showed them what could happen to their company.
Wow.
And so it was little things like that where I didn't think much of that when I made it. I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And then it had a big impact on the other side.
Huge.
To me, I think it was 3 times. I mean, hopefully whoever sees this doesn't say, that wasn't 3 times. It was only whatever it was. It was more than they asked for. So, yeah, I mean, and then, when we did the films, so I've done, so I did the 2 films with Film and Play with Lisa like 10 years ago. And then recently, 18 to Party was the first film I did with my friend Jeff Rhoda, who wrote and directed it. And it was meant to be, he wanted to make sort of a Richard Linklater style play, which is what it was. It was a play initially. And so that was a fun project, 2 locations really, very, very simple shoot. And we got, I think it's an interesting movie. Kids, we were working with kids, which is never easy. Jeff did a great job. And then later, we did a documentary about this woman, amazing, this woman, Myrtle Simpson, who is 90 something years old. Wow. She's 91 now. She was a polar explorer. And so my friend Leanne and I made this documentary. We're still working on trying to make a feature out of it. The short is out in festivals.
Oh, nice.
And then she told me some great stories that I'm trying to turn into feature films as well. So it's just like, as long as your ears are open, there's ideas everywhere.
Wow.
And then the last film we did was really interesting. My friend wrote it probably 10 years ago. He started writing it. And then it sort of, just for his willpower, he was just like, I'm going to raise the money. And he went out there and he did it. And he had a friend of his, Sean, who's directing it, who I know in New York. And that movie was called Last Night in Rozzi. It came out in theaters. We had a 10-city theatrical run, which we did not expect at all. That was, and then now it's on Amazon, and all of them are on Amazon and Apple TV and all that. And that was fun to watch him turn it from a script, all the way from sitting in writer's group like this, just sitting in your living room writing that thing, to seeing it on the screen in LA for the premiere. It was sort of great. So, I just think you never know. You can put there's other stuff I've done that I thought for sure this is going to be awesome, and then it just nothing ever happens from it. No one cares. So I don't ever know.
But there's just something, regardless of what the results are, right? Just for us as creators to say, you know what, we're just gonna keep our ideas going and keep creating and just do it for the love of the arts. Right?
Yeah, that's it.
We're quickly down to our last few minutes.
All right.
I want to just give you opportunity to express to the front camera if there's anything that you have going on right now, or anything you would like to promote, or even just a message. Just your time to shine.
My time. All right. Well, all I can say is, thank you for having me.
No,
it's great
absolutely.
to be here. We are currently working on a film called Lolo, which is a true story based here in Honolulu. And it is, we are hopefully shooting in the spring now. And you can go to surflolo.com, which is just starting. And there's some cool merchandise that we're starting to put up there. And if you're a director, or come find me, because I need some help here in Honolulu. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. This is Andrew from Cahill Brothers. So much to explore in terms of, I haven't even seen all your work, so I can't wait just to start downloading things and just seeing things that you've made. So glad to have you on this set.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for our conversation, and looking forward to being at your next movie premiere, hopefully.
Hopefully we can come back here and talk about Lola after it's shot.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that name, and I can't wait to see the merch that you guys have made. Must have had a lot of fun putting that together.
Yeah, the logo is cool. I'll show it to you. But
well, that's all the time that we have for today, everybody, and we'll look to see you next time here on I Am Talk. And God bless. Take care.
instaMERSION.
I would love to thank you for hanging out with us here on I Am Talk. Hit the subscribe button to stay in tune with our channel. Oh, and don't forget to tap that bell icon to get notifications on the latest episodes coming your way. We're always looking for the next guests to talk story with here on I Am Talk. So if you just shoot me an email at alex@instaMERSION.com, I'll be sure to shoot a guest application your way. Well guys, that's all for now. Until our next episode of I Am Talk, this is Alex, and I'm out. Peace!